the wine industry can often be seen as a cutthroat and a challenging business to get into. So in an effort to bridge the gap in economic inclusion and representation for communities of color, global wine industry pioneer and activist Tahiirah Habibi is currently in South Africa to launch the Hue Society's first international chapter. She's also here to invite South African winemakers to the exclusive Wine and Culture Fest in Atlanta, that's in the U.S., in August. She joins us now via our video link for more on this. It's great to have you on the program, Tahiirah. Thanks so much indeed for making time. Part of what you're being described as is a wine industry activist. Tell us a bit more about that before we speak about what brings you to South Africa.
Yeah, you know, my ethos is really based on creating access and resources for people who have traditionally been underrepresented and ignored in the industry. And so for me, it's really important to make sure that that foundation is laid for everybody to have the same opportunities to excel in whatever it is that they love in this space.
Yeah, many of us enjoy a glass of wine on any other day. Mm-hmm. Perhaps I speak more for myself than anybody else, but there are people who don't really know what it takes to get that wine made. Speak to us about perhaps some of the barriers to entry that are typically faced, especially by people of color, given the history perhaps of many who are involved in this industry.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest barriers is land, right? Ownership. A lot of people, particularly in the U.S., have started to create their own brands, but they still don't own the land. We know what the situation is here with land ownership, and it's the lack of education. A lot of times we don't see ourselves in the space or mirrored in the space, and so we feel like it's okay to drink it, but being involved as a career has not really been an option for us up until the last few years, where we've started to see more and more Black and brown people participating from a business side.
Yeah, and I guess that's where the Hue Society comes in. Tell us a bit more about that platform.
Right, so I founded the Hue Society in 2017. I was a somm in the U.S. I decided to start using my talents to create spaces for the Black wine community to learn and feel good about learning in a safe space without having to code switch or pretend to be or speak any kind of way. That you can come in and just be yourself and get that education or just enjoy the wine. It's really about community building and the freedom of enjoying yourself as yourself.
Yeah. I mean, you know, in mining, for instance, there's a lot of conversation around having indigenous communities be involved in any kind of development. But I imagine similar conversations can be had even in the wine industry about how you can make sure there's more indigenous representation given where the wine ultimately comes from.
Right. I think that's really important because, you know, people who are from this land absolutely deserve the same opportunity to not only make pleasurable gains, but financial gains in the space. And that hasn't traditionally been the way. You think about the global industry, we're a very small percentage. You know, we're thinking about 1%, the U.S. and Africa as well. So what I'm trying to do is make sure that people know that they have these pathways to be able to join the industry from whichever angle they want to. You don't just have to be a winemaker or a somm. There's lots of jobs in the wine industry, and, you know, we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry at the same time. And so that socioeconomic status is very important.
Yeah. What sense are you getting from those who are within the industry about how inclusive they actually want it to be? Because in many other instances, we know that typically there are gatekeepers that are preventing this kind of, you know, inclusive process from unfolding in the truest sense of the word, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, gatekeeping is really a big thing, I think, on both sides. You know, you have this mentality of people who just want to be the only one in the room because they felt like they fought hard to get there. And obviously you have other people who just enjoy the luxury of having that power. But the thing about power for me is I believe in the redistribution of power and making sure that everyone has access, and me using my power to help you doesn't take away from my power at all, or resources. And so it's just a really important thing to kind of not focus on the people who think like that, but really dismantling the systems that are empowering that kind of thinking.
Your involvement is a bit transatlantic in a way, isn't it? Because a part of the ambition here is to also make sure that people are involved in this Wine and Culture Festival in Atlanta. How much of that see cross-border collaboration do you feel takes place, and how much more of it can still happen?
Well, I was very passionate about the South African industry because for multiple reasons, but a lot of people in the U.S. believe when they are drinking, enjoying South African wine, that they are supporting Black and indigenous people here, and we all know that's not exactly true. So I really wanted to shed some light and some focus on that. So we're really honing in on South Africa this year during the festival, and I wanted it to be as authentic as possible. I wanted, the wine industry here to come and see what it is like in the U.S. and those perceptions, but I also want the U.S. to understand what it is like here and how can we build across, globally to make it better for both sides, both from consumer standpoints, but also from brand and marketing.
Yeah. I can imagine, for instance, winemakers who've been struggling to break in, thinking about how they could make the most of this kind of initiative, really, and the opportunities that come on the back of it. How can people reach, this kind of work that you're doing in order to participate meaningfully in this industry?
I think, one of the easiest ways is Instagram, but, we're the Hue Society on Instagram, but also I'm always available on email. I try to get as many people behind this position as possible. So reaching out, just, telling your story, letting us know how we can be of value to you, but also that allows us to push for people who are decision makers here and there to be of value as well, and helping to make sure that people are able to get what they need out of this, not just as an event, but to be able to support their livelihoods.
Absolutely. Well, Tahiirah Habibi, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. An important discussion there about ways through which we can make the wine industry a whole lot more inclusive than it currently is. Tahiirah, I really appreciate your time. She is a wine industry pioneer and an activist in the space as well.